Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Today was day 70 of the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings, and it featured the final, we were told, the final research and policy roundtable of the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings. So I'll talk about that in a minute, but the biggest news of the day actually I got a message this afternoon from loyal reader, watcher. What did I think of the latest Frank Magazine article? And so I couldn't wait. I clicked on Frank Magazine, but it was bad news. The Frank Magazine has announced that after 35 years of publishing, they are no more. They said 35 years, by the way, so that's 1987. I could have swore I was reading Frank Magazine younger than as a 10-year-old, but maybe not, I guess. They say they were stricken with a rogues gallery of grievous and irremediable medical conditions. Death was quick and mostly painless, and referenced the medical assistance in dying. So darkly humorous right till the end. So this was quite a surprise. I'm a subscriber to Frank Magazine. Used to buy it all the time at the store, Sobeys or wherever. Frank Magazine has really been the most thorough and the most courageously investigative news outlet and source for information on the mass casualty events, the proceedings, all of these things. So it was a valuable resource to me, certainly in the work that I'm doing, bringing you the analysis. You can't have analysis without facts, and well, you can, but it's not as good. So the reporting from Paul Palango, from Andrew Douglas, has been spectacular when it comes to the Mass Casualty Commission and the events. So they'll be missed in that regard, but as just a wider resource, telling the stories that nobody else really wanted to tell. I've been in Frank Magazine a few times, not that often, always for good things, which tells you that they've missed a few things along the way. But I kept one article. This was the July 12th, 2005 issue of Frank Magazine. You'll see this was the call to the bar. Every year for the call to the bar, they list out the new lawyers, and they say particularly attention to anybody famous. That's why my friend Jan Murray, niece of Anne Murray, is on the cover, and not me. But they do mention, get a mention on page 16, right after John Sedgwick, who is now assistant GM at for the Montreal Canadiens. My former roommate. We get Adam Rogers, just above there. BBA Acadia, LLB Dal, son of Danny and Mary Teresa Rogers, Guysborough, articled with Cox Hansen Halifax, the firm which is now Cox and Palmer. And then I get a little brief mention in the little paragraph on Nova Scotia lawyers with all the other prominent or at least notable moms and pops among some of the others, and they go through them all. Adam Daniel Rogers, his dad. Danny is an elementary school teacher at the Shutterbuckto Education Centre in Guysborough. Well, he's retired now, but I don't know why they didn't get... my mother will be upset they didn't mention her. Anyway, that's... so Frank Magazine is gone. I'll be interested to hear exactly what happened there. I assume it's readership and financial issues, but we'll see. Hopefully we'll hear more from Andrew Douglas, certainly from Paul Palango. He has his own independent presence, but Andrew Douglas, I'm sure, will land on his feet on a Substack near you. So we'll see what happens there. The proceedings today. Like I said, the final research and policy roundtable. Has been quite a number of these. We've seen Dr. Emma Cunliffe many times, especially over the last few weeks. So today there were quite a few people participating in the discussion. This morning there were 19 total plus the moderator, so 20 people that were part of it. In the morning there was a little more concentrated. There was Dr. Cunliffe, Dr. Holly Campeau from the University of Alberta, sociologist, Dr. Benjamin Gould from the Allard School of Law at UBC, Dr. Bethan Loftus from Bangor University, not in Maine, in the UK, Dr. Kanika Samuels-Wortley from Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson, Jenyan Kwan, University of Toronto doctoral candidate, Professor Kent Roach. Lawyers would know this name, author of many good criminal law articles. University of Toronto, Micheline Lehane, who is the chair of what's called the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP. So today was talking about police oversight and what systems should be in place to ensure proper oversight of police operations, police culture, all of those things. The afternoon session kept all of the morning session speakers and added a number of others. Christina Fifield from the Avalon Centre, Wes Blair, who's with the RCMP in Nova Scotia, Joanne Gibb, who was with the policy and was a policy person with the Civilian Review and Oversight Complaints Commission, for the RCMP. Assistant Commissioner Alfredo Bangloy, RCMP National Conduct Section. Emma Arnold from who's an article clerk with the Elizabeth Fry Centre, Nova Scotia. Corey Payne with the RCMP. Emily Stewart, Executive Director of Third Place, which is a Sexual Assault Response Centre. Luke Cote with Serious Incident Response Team, Nova Scotia. Lindell Smith, Halifax Regional Municipality Councillor. Megan McDermott with the BC Civil Liberties Association. Julie Thompson with Public Safety Canada, and Melinda Sellers also with Public Safety Canada. So, lots of people, not a lot of time for answers. Dr. Cunliffe actually took up a lot of the airtime herself with her questions and trying to summarize properly everybody's responses. And so nobody really got a whole lot of time to say whatever it was they wanted to say. I think they'll have to be satisfied with written submissions to get to the real, whatever substantive things, other substantive things that they wanted to say. So, again, since this is the last policy and policy roundtable, this will be the last time that I tell you that there was no discussion of the events of the mass casualty of April 18th and 19th, 2020 in Nova Scotia. Just like other experts, none of them today were asked to comment on any of the specifics of the shootings in Nova Scotia. So, a major fault of this process all the way through. People were speaking from their research in generalities. All of this research could have been done and probably was done prior to the events of the mass casualty. So nothing was done in reaction to the events or was informed by those events, seemingly. So now, like I said, there was a lot of preparation you could see went into this, and there was a real effort. It was kind of like the evidence that has been presented from witnesses, where there seems to be a real effort on the part of the commission, the Mass Casualty Commission, to control the narrative. And so the discussion today, the questions were very narrowly focused by Dr. Cunliffe, long introductions, directing speakers to specific topics and points. And then, she made reference to pre-interviews with the panelists. So we weren't getting fresh thoughts here. We were getting, there was lots of pre-interviews done, and then Dr. Cunliffe got to the points where she wanted to get to. So it's good to prepare, of course, but it sometimes leads to things and discussions being too controlled. Maybe when you have 20 people trying to participate in a discussion, that's what you need to do. But that was my sense of it listening to the discussion today. So some of the points that were raised, I guess, just talking about, thinking of future police oversight. One of the points that came up a few times was that marginalized populations often do not utilize police complaints process because it's going to be police investigating police. And so, if you don't trust the police in the first place, you're not going to be inclined to trust the police review of that, whatever the complaint may be. And the second thing that came up a few times is that there's police discretion. Discretion is often used by the police, and it's tough to evaluate that because it's not often something where notes are taken. Why did you let this person go? Why did you do this? And so, and often there's no complaint made by people who would benefit from the discretion. All right, why did you let that person go? They're not going to complain that, hey, the police officer didn't, arrest me for this or didn't give me a speeding ticket because, I was a white male or a privileged position. Nobody's going to make that kind of complaint. So you don't hear about those sides of equations. And we heard that from the individuals from the Civilian Review Board of the RCMP that it doesn't allow, the legislation doesn't allow the review board to direct the RCMP to implement recommendations. So this is a fault of sort of a shortcoming of the legislation. There is new legislation federally, the C20 bill, C20, that would force the RCMP commissioner to publicize yearly what steps that they've taken, the RCMP has taken to implement recommendations. But again, it wouldn't force them to do so. It would just force them to explain what they've done and why they haven't implemented certain recommendations. A step in the right direction, but not thorough, rigorous kind of oversight that you might expect in these kind of situations. Lindell Smith, who was the chair of the RCMP oversight out of HRM, talked about how they could talk about operations, but they can't get into budget questions. And then we also heard otherwise that the province of Nova Scotia cannot conduct systemic reviews of the RCMP in the way that the federal civilian review can. So there's a real lack of local control. So HRM, Halifax can't really get into operational details with the RCMP, who police is part of HRM, and the province cannot conduct systemic reviews of RCMP operations. We also heard that when the federal civilian review wants to review something that the RCMP has done, they need to, have budget approval for that, and their budget is done through the RCMP. So there can be a sort of a back end undermining of that review process if the budget isn't there to ensure that there's resources in there to conduct a proper review. Chief Commissioner McDonald, I guess now, pointed that out in his later remarks too. It was something I noted as we were going through that's certainly a shortcoming of the review system. So there really doesn't seem to be a rigorous, thorough review system for the RCMP. So if we're thinking about something, whether it's a provincial police force or something that's going to be Nova Scotia centered, we would certainly want to ensure that there is that civilian oversight. Kent Roach, Professor Roach, was saying, he was talking about bold things like shutting down depot, giving officers more flexibility to deal with health and safety calls. But he also talked about there should be more community focused sort of oversight, and it has to be more localized. So that's a theme that echoed throughout several of the speakers, compellingly, I thought. And then Holly Campos, a sociologist, mentioned that, we have to resist the thinking that, the policies around policing and the whole policing environment is unique, and unique such that regular people like us couldn't possibly understand it and therefore could not possibly give it intelligent oversight. Well, you have to push back against that, have provincial, local, municipal oversight of these policies and activities of the police. So some interesting things that came out of that today. Those were some of the highlights, I thought. So tomorrow was the Mass Casualty Commission is back on, but not starting until 2 p.m. according to the calendar and according to the final remarks today. We're going to hear from justice-related organizations. I think the BC Civil Liberties Union would be one of those, I suspect. The Avalon Sexual Assault Centre is going to do a presentation of remarks, summaries that they've heard from marginalized individuals and populations that had connections with Wortman. And so that's going to start at 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. I'll watch that and bring you my thoughts on that. And then next week is the final week of any proceedings that are listed in the calendar, but there's no indication of exactly what those proceedings are going to involve. There's no details on the Mass Casualty Commission website as of yet. I suspect, as has been the practice, that we'll learn about that tomorrow. Presumably, we will not be seeing anything on Monday, the federal and now provincial holiday for the Queen's funeral. But there's 4 days listed for proceedings next week. Unclear if there's any witnesses or other experts being brought back for any purpose, but we're winding down, and there's going to be questions as to why certain things were or weren't included in the public proceedings of the Mass Casualty Commission. But there's 4 days. Tomorrow is set, and then there's 4 days on the calendar that haven't been scheduled. So we'll see what fills that up, if anything. It may. We may hear that tomorrow's it. I don't know, but I suspect there'll be something on next week. Anyway, so that's it for today. Again, big news about Frank Magazine's been around for 35 years, publishing in Nova Scotia, doing a lot of the stories that nobody else has done or would be willing to do. So hopefully we'll get some kind of a replacement that fills that gap. But in the meantime, we'll see what happened there. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow, and so we'll see you next time.